Oh, yo, yo. Bless up, I say now, bless up, bless up. Erupt, we have to erupt. Bless up, I say now, bless up, yeah. Me tell you this, bless up, I say now, bless up. Bless up all the Queen and King. Bless up Original Wrench Mob. Bless up Team Rebel. We in the building. Good to see y'all, family. Got my thing in order. I'm back. Bless up Queen Honey. Hey, Queen Honey, I need to holler at you when I get done with the live, okay? For sure. Bless up, Chateau. Bless up, Queen. Good to see you. Yeah, good to see all the Queen. All the Queen and King in the place. Queen Bonita. Bless up, Queen Kim. Bless up. Queen Foxy. Bless up, Queen. Good to see everybody. For sure. We rebelling. Y'all know it. I think I'm gonna play it. Yeah, bless up, bless up. Queen Sylvine, bless up, Queen. King Antoine, bless up, my brother. Good to see you. Yeah, I miss y'all too, everybody. Yep. Queen Lanisha, bless up. Good to see you, Queen. Psst, psst, psst. You know, we in the building. Y'all know it. Hey, that's what's up, Queen. Bless up, Queen Marcy. Bless up, Queen Tanya. Hey, it's good to see you too, Queen. You know it. I miss y'all so much, you know. Just been getting some things together. Had a small issue, you know, with the equipment. Y'all know it. Team Rebel, we in the building. They know how we do it. Yeah. So, yeah, before we get started, I want to say this quick, and then we're gonna move. Oh, bless up. Thank you, Queen. Yeah, it's just a little kick-around hat that I wear during the week, you know, when I'm doing my rebelling. Yeah, I miss y'all too, you know what I mean? I've been putting together some things, though, to make sure that we okay whenever we see each other. You know, that's one thing that'll always happen, so, you know. And I notice it's been a lot. King Loves, what's up, my brother? How you doing? Bless up, Brother King. Yeah. So, just wanted to get some stuff together. I have some stuff together for now, but I got just as important things for later on tonight, too. So, we back on track. Got the equipment working, got things moving. You know what I'm saying? So, we're gonna keep rebelling. Bless up, Queen Lisa. Good to see you, Queen. Bless up, Queen Ashanti. Yeah, so, you know, good to see everybody. Bless up to all of y'all. This room, Team Rebel, in this room, we use no profanity at all. Also, in this room, we don't disrespect any queens or kings at all. You know what I mean? If you have a problem with those two requests, those blue names that you see going by in the chat, they handle any going zones in the room. So, all right. Just wanted to let y'all know. Now, today, you know, I'm describing things in... I'm describing things on my heading a little different than what I'm going to do. Bless up, Arrakis. Boom. Yeah. Miss Playful, bless up, Queen. Yeah, so what it is, you know, if y'all don't mind, go ahead and like the page. Like what's going on right now because we're about to get into it hard and heavy. You know, definitely... Miss Anointed, bless up, Queen. Too anointed to be disappointed. I see you shining. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Team Rebel. That's what I'm saying. My family. I know. We rebelling. Yeah. So, as y'all can see in the heading, also, the videos y'all see here today are not owned by Team Rebel. They are owned by the people who created them and the people who... produce them and the authors. We merely watch them and use them for learning purposes only. Thank you. Okay, I think I got everything covered. Okay, yeah, now what I really wanted to do is the reason I call it the rabbit hole. It's not to any specific thing, but it's pertaining to all things. So I think it's a great representation of how, we got involved in certain things and how we at the point we're at now, even as we speak on YouTube in different areas of life. So I think it's important that, that we catch an eighth of that so we can understand the enemy a little more. The enemy that has people in the bind that they're in, that creates jealousy and hate and things like that. So I wanted to show y'all a little bit of this first, and then we're going to go into some other things. But y'all just go ahead. Bless up, Queen Fragrance. Y'all just go ahead, sit with me, chill. We're going to have us a good time as usual. Y'all know how we do it, to get that knowledge so we can know thy enemy is knowing thyself, and knowing what we could do, knowing what to do. So if we don't know the kind of things that are going on around us, this is what I'm always big on and I always will be. If we don't know that, then we lose. So I don't want us to be losers. I love y'all. Bless up. We in the building. Team Rebel. Okay. Now this first one, you make sure. Shout out to Yusef G. Bless up to that brother. This was published in 2015, but I wanted to know, these are questions that I have for us on how to understand what's going on around us. While we live in the day-to-day world, there's other things and mechanisms that are going on around us. So we just wanted to get, bless up, Slick, bless up, Queen Michelle, bless up, good to see you. Yeah, but it's just give us more of an insight on what's going on around us at the same time, moment by moment for moment. Sort of like what we're going through when we're watching the J4K. You know what I'm saying? We see in the videos go, it's 2 videos happening at once, things like that. You know what I'm saying? So this is the same with life. And I want to show y'all on the physical plane how things are moving. So I know y'all probably saw it before, some of you guys, but I like to share with the entire room so we can all get this information. Bless up all the Queen and King. Bless up to Team Rebel. We in the building. That's what it is. We ain't going nowhere. So y'all check it out closely. If you don't get it this time.
They say that money doesn't grow on trees, but the truth is that the modern banking system creates currency far faster than trees can grow. Most people don't have a clue how currency is created. Economists and bankers make it sound so complex that people think they can't understand it. But I'm going to strip our monetary system down to its essence so that you can see the scam behind the curtain and just how it affects you. Every modern society creates currency in pretty much the same way. But since the U.S. dollar is the majority of the world's currency, I'm going to use the United States as our example. It all starts when some politician says, vote for me and I'll make sure the government provides you more free stuff than my opponent will. But there's no such thing as a free lunch. So to provide that supposedly free stuff, the politicians vote for the country to spend more than its income. This is called deficit spending. To pay for that deficit spending, the Treasury borrows currency by issuing a bond. So what's a bond? If you think about it, a bond is really nothing but a glorified IOU. It's a pretty piece of paper with numbers printed on it that says, loan me $1 trillion today, and I promise over a 10-year period I'm going to pay you back that $1 trillion plus interest. But what you need to understand is that Treasury bonds are our national debt. These glorified IOUs are to be paid back by you and I and our descendants through future taxation. Therefore, when the government issues a bond, it steals prosperity out of the future so that it can spend it today. The Treasury then holds a bond auction, and the world's largest banks show up and compete to buy part of our national debt and make a profit on it by earning interest. You'll notice that as we move through this process, the big banks are there, taking a cut every step of the way. This isn't by chance, as you'll see shortly. Then, through a shell game called open market operations, the banks get to sell some of those bonds to the Federal Reserve at a profit. To pay for the bonds, the Federal Reserve opens up its big old checkbook and writes bad, bogus, counterfeit checks that should bounce because they're drawn on an account that always has a zero balance. There isn't one penny in there. To quote from the Boston Federal Reserve, when you or I write a check, there must be sufficient funds in our account to cover that check. But when the Federal Reserve writes a check, there is no bank deposit on which that check is drawn. When the Federal Reserve writes a check, it is creating money. The Fed then hands those checks to the banks, and at this point, currency springs into existence. The banks then take that currency and buy more bonds at the next Treasury auction. But what is a check? A check is also an IOU. When you write a check, you're making a note that says, here's my IOU for cash. All you have to do is go to the bank and pick it up. Now, it's very, very important that you understand this process, because we're going to come back later and show you the devastating effect this has on you. The Treasury issues IOUs, bonds. The banks then buy those IOUs with currency. The Federal Reserve then writes IOUs, checks, and hands them to the banks in exchange for the Treasury's IOUs, the bonds. And currency is created. So what's really happening is the Federal Reserve and the Treasury are just swapping IOUs, using the banks as middlemen, and abracadabra, presto, currency magically springs into existence. This process repeats and repeats over and over again, enriching the banks and indebting the public by raising the national debt. The end result is that there's a buildup of bonds at the Federal Reserve and currency at the Treasury. This process is also where all paper currency comes from. The Federal Reserve and the government mistakenly call it base money because they didn't watch episode 1 of this series and they don't know the difference between money and currency. But I will correctly refer to it as base currency because it is not money. It is currency, and as we've learned, there is a big difference. Money has to be a store of value and maintain its purchasing power over long periods of time. We learned in episode 1 that earlier in our history, our paper currency was just a claim check. It was a representation for real money of intrinsic value, the gold and silver that was held on deposit at the Treasury. You could walk into any bank and slap your currency, like say a $20 bill, on the counter and redeem it for real money, a $20 gold piece. But now, this base currency that's piling up back here is really nothing but a receipt or a claim check on an IOU, that bond. So it's really nothing but a supply of numbers. The Treasury then deposits the newly created currency into the various branches of the government, and the politicians say, hey, thanks for that. And the government does some deficit spending on public works, social programs, and war. The government employees, contractors, and soldiers then deposit their pay in the banks. Now, this may come as a shock to you, but when you deposit your currency with the bank, you're not actually depositing it into an account to be safely held in trust for you. Instead, you're actually loaning the bank your currency, and within certain legal limits, they can do with it pretty much anything they please. This includes gambling in the stock market and loaning it out, at a profit, of course. Now this is where the machine of currency creation really gets cranking, because this is where something called fractional reserve lending comes into play. Fractional reserve lending is exactly what it says. The banks are allowed to reserve only a fraction of your deposit and loan the rest out. Although reserve ratios may vary, I'm going to use a 10% reserve ratio as our example. If you deposit $100 in your account, the bank can legally take $90 of it and loan it out without telling you. The bank must hold $10 of your deposit in reserve just in case you want some of it. These reserves are called vault cash. But why does your bank account still say you have $100 if the bank has stolen $90 of it? Because the bank left IOUs it created, called bank credit, in its place. Now I know this sounds crazy, but here it is in black and white from the Fed. Commercial banks create checkbook money when they grant a loan simply by adding new deposit dollars in accounts on their books in exchange for a borrower's IOU. These are nothing but numbers that the banks type into their computers. And even though these bank credit IOU numbers are very different from base currency numbers, because they only exist in computers, they are still currency. So now there is $190 in existence. Now, the reason people take out loans from the banks is to buy something. They're going to buy a house or a car or something like that. So the borrower takes the $90 that the bank loaned to him from your account, and he pays the seller of the item. But then the seller deposits that currency into his account, and his bank loans out 90% of that and leaves bank credit numbers in its place. So now there's $271 in existence. This process repeats and repeats until under a 10% reserve ratio, an initial deposit of just $100 can create up to $1,000 of bank credit, all backed by $100 of vault cash, just 10%. But as I said, reserve ratios vary wildly. On some deposits, it's 10%, on others, it's 3%, and on some forms of deposits, reserve requirements are 0. The result is that the expansion of the currency supply by the banks is far greater than even this example would lead you to believe. So once again, when currency is deposited in the banks get to lend it out, and then it gets redeposited and relent, redeposited and relent, redeposited and relent over and over again, creating bank credit all the way. This is where the vast majority of our currency supply comes from. In fact, 92 to 96% of all currency in existence is created not by the government, but here in the banking system. Now, massive amounts of currency spewing into society may at first sound like a fun idea. That is, until you remember one of the most important hidden secrets of money from episode 1, that the prices of everyday goods and services act as a sponge on an expanding currency supply. The more currency we have, the more prices rise. This is where inflation comes from. The true definition of inflation is an expansion of the currency supply. Rising prices are merely the symptom. So our entire currency supply is nothing but a couple of bucks whipped up in this hocus-pocus scam where the Treasury and the Federal Reserve swap glorified IOUs, and a bunch of numbers that the banks just type into their computers. That's it. That's our entire currency supply. It's nothing but a supply of numbers. Some of them printed, most of them typed, and there is nothing else. But if you thought that was crazy, get ready to enter the twilight zone of modern economics. We work for some of that currency supply. True wealth is your time, but we trade away moments of our lives, hour by hour, day by day, and year by year, for numbers that somebody printed on pieces of paper or just typed into a computer. Now those numbers represent our blood, sweat, tears, labor, ideas, and talent. We are what gives the currency its value. But here comes the really cruel joke. We work hard so that we can save some of that currency, so that we can pay the tax collector in the United States, it's known as the IRS. They then turn it over to the Treasury so that the Treasury can pay the principal plus interest on that bond that the Federal Reserve bought with a check drawn on an account that has nothing in it. Now let's do a recap on this section because this is where the system begins to rob you and I on a massive scale. Much of our taxes are not used for schools, roads, and public services, but to pay interest on bonds that the Federal Reserve bought with a check drawn on an account that has nothing in it. The Federal Reserve is committing fraud. But here's one of the biggest secrets of them all. Before the establishment of the Federal Reserve, there was no need for personal income tax. The Federal Reserve was created in 1913, and that very same year, the Constitution was amended to allow income tax. Do you really think this was just a coincidence? Ask yourself how much income tax you've paid over your lifetime. Much of it has been silently siphoned away into the hands of those who own the system. Yes, this system has owners. Who they are is an even bigger secret that we'll get to shortly. But first, we need to understand the mumbo-jumbo of the so-called debt ceiling. It's all based on a huge paradox. There was interest due on that bond, and there was interest due on every one of those loans that the banks made. That means that there is interest due on every dollar in existence. Let me ask you something. If you borrow the very first dollar into existence, and that's the only dollar that exists on the planet, but you promise to pay it back plus another dollar's worth of interest, where do you get the second dollar to pay the interest? The answer is that you have to borrow that one into existence and promise to pay it back with interest as well. So now there are $2 in existence, but you owe $4, and so on and so on. The result is there's never enough currency to pay the debt. There is always more debt in the system than there is currency in existence to pay the debt. Therefore, the whole system is impossible. It is finite. It will come to an end one day. What would happen if the government stopped borrowing to do deficit spending? Are the payments on those treasury bonds going to stop? What would happen if the public stopped borrowing and going deeper into debt? Are your house and car payments going to stop? No. There is a payment due every month on the principal plus the interest on every dollar in existence, and those payments do not stop. If we stop borrowing, then no new currency is created to replace the currency that we used to make those payments. Whether you're making a payment on a loan or paying tax to make a payment on a bond, the portion of the payment that goes to pay off the principal extinguishes that portion of the debt. But the debt also extinguishes the currency. Currency and debt are like matter and antimatter. When they meet, they annihilate each other. If we just pay off the principal only on all the loans and bonds that exist, the entire currency supply just vanishes. So if we don't go deeper into debt every year, look what happens. The whole thing goes into a deflationary collapse under the weight of those payments. Politicians and pundits alike talk about balancing the budget, paying down the debt, and living within our means. They don't understand that that is deflationary. It is impossible to do under our current monetary system without collapsing the whole economy. This is why any talk of a debt ceiling is not only ridiculous, it's delusional. The system is designed to require ever-increasing levels of debt just to continue. And that's why politicians will always kick the can down the road and raise this so-called debt ceiling over and over again until the whole system finally collapses under its own weight. In other words, they don't want it to collapse on their watch. The founding fathers of the United States knew the dangers of central banking and fought to free themselves from this very thing. The Revolutionary War started out as a tax revolt, but now we must pay tax just to have a monetary system. Having just suffered through the hyperinflation of the continental dollar, which was printed into oblivion to finance the Revolutionary War, they understood the dangers of fiat currency and debt-based monetary systems. So to protect future generations from institutional theft and out-of-control government, they wrote into the Constitution that only gold and silver can be money for the simple fact that you can't print them. Our current system is not only unconstitutional, but it robs us of the liberty and prosperity our forefathers fought and died for. We are all feeling the effects of ignoring the Constitution right now. By forcing more currency into circulation, our purchasing power is diluted. Inflation is a slow and insidious stealth tax that is simply the result of this debt-based monetary system. This system empowers and benefits those who create the currency and receive it first, as they get to spend it into circulation before it has an effect on the economy. They're stealing purchasing power from you and transferring it to the banks and the government every hour of every day because of this false monetary system. And it's not like the people at the top don't know this. To quote the Federal Reserve, the decrease in purchasing power incurred by the holders of money due to inflation imparts gains to the issuers of money. This is a fraud. It is a pyramid scheme, it is a Ponzi scheme, it's a scam, and it's a lie. Our entire monetary system is nothing but a form of legalized theft. But here's the biggest con job of them all. The Federal Reserve is not federal. It has stockholders. There is no federal agency that has stockholders. What's a stockholder? A share of stock represents a percentage of ownership in a corporation. So the stockholders are the owners of that corporation. Therefore, the Federal Reserve is a private corporation with owners. And you can see it for yourself if you go to the Federal Reserve's website, and it will say, the stockholders receive an annual dividend of 6%. Now, we know that the stock in the Federal Reserve was originally issued to the largest banks in the United States. But because of mergers and acquisitions through the years, you can't actually trace who owns the stock in the Federal Reserve. That's a very closely guarded secret. My guess would be that the owners are those primary dealers, the banks that get to make a profit by selling part of our national debt, those bonds, to the Federal Reserve, who buys them with a check from nothing. Then we pay tax to pay the principal and the interest on those bonds so that the Federal Reserve can pay the banks a 6% dividend. Don't be alarmed if you don't quite comprehend the deception of this system at first glance. Very few people do. It is purposely complex. The economist John Maynard Keynes once wrote, "By this means, government may secretly and unobserved confiscate the wealth of the people, and not one man in a million will detect the theft." I believe that presented correctly, Anyone can understand this system, regardless of how complex it is. So let's do a recap and break it down even more. The way the system works is that, step 1, the government creates glorified IOUs. These bonds increase our national debt and put the public on the hook to pay it back. Step 2, IOUs are swapped to create currency. The Treasury sells the bonds to the banks. The banks then turn around and sell our national debt at a profit to the Federal Reserve, which they probably own. The Federal Reserve then opens its checkbook that doesn't have a penny in it and buys those IOUs with IOUs that it writes, checks, on a checking account that has a zero balance. Then they give those checks to the banks and currency just springs into existence, and then the whole process repeats. This results in a buildup of bonds at the Federal Reserve and currency at the Treasury, which is really just a supply of numbers. The Treasury then deposits the numbers in the various branches of the government, and we get to step 3. The government spends the numbers on promises, public works, social programs, and war. Then the government employees, contractors, and soldiers deposit their pay into the banks, and we get to step 4, where the banks multiply the numbers by magically inventing more IOUs through fractional reserve lending, where they steal a portion of everyone's deposit and lend it out. That currency gets redeposited, and then a portion is stolen again, and the process repeats over and over, magnifying the currency supply exponentially. Then we work for some of those numbers, which brings us to step 5, where our numbers are taxed. We pay tax to the IRS, who then turns our numbers over to the Treasury, so the Treasury can pay the principal plus the interest on bonds that were purchased by the Federal Reserve with a check from nothing. Then we get to step 6, the debt ceiling delusion. The system is designed to require ever-increasing levels of debt and will eventually collapse under its own weight because politicians always kick the can down the road. They don't want it to collapse on their watch. And finally, step 7, the secret owners take their cut. The world's largest banks own the Federal Reserve. Those banks make a profit selling our national debt to the Fed. They make a profit when the Fed pays them interest on the reserves held at the Fed, and the Fed pays them a 6% dividend on their ownership of the Fed. This system is fundamentally evil. It funnels wealth from the working population to the government and the banking sector. It is the cause of the artificial booms and busts of modern economies, and it causes great disparity of wealth between the rich and the working class. And it is only possible because we no longer use real money, we use currency. But worst of all, it is a form of enslavement. Bond is the root word of bondage. Whenever a government issues a bond, it is a promise to make us pay tax in the future. Nobody asked you if you wanted to pay tax today for the prosperity we all enjoyed in the last century. Nobody is asking our children if they want to work hard in the future to pay for the prosperity we're enjoying now. George Washington once wrote to James Madison, "No generation has the right to contract debts greater than can be paid off during the course of its own existence." By stealing prosperity from tomorrow so we can spend it today, we enslave ourselves and future generations. Now this all sounds pretty bad, but there is great hope, for you are the greatest threat to this false monetary system. This system relies on the public being ignorant of its workings. Please share this knowledge with everyone you know, because an informed public that fully understands the system can build a better future for generations to come.
Bless up, bless up. Bless up, Queen Beautiful. Bless up, Queen Ruthie. Bless up, little bro Mark. I see you shining, bruh. Be safe driving out there. Bless up, Queen Georgina. I see you shining. Bless up, bless up. Yeah, but y'all see the monetary system and how they got it set up. That's something that I found to be really important with what's going on. Bless up, Queen Valerie. Yeah, it's important to what's going on and as far as how money works. That's what I want us to see. Yeah, that's true, tough. Yeah, but you know, and this how they doing. You know what I mean? They out here and they got this system rolling to the point where, I mean, they know what they're doing. Like they could create, say for instance, through the supremacist aspect of the system, they creating like the doubt, the jealousy. I mean, just creating people into being monsters and doing things like that over money that don't exist. Really, like the brother said, like King Antoine said, that fiat currency, you know, made up out of thin air. And that's what's been going on a lot. You know what I mean? And we've lived our whole lives in it, and we still live in it as we speak, and it's still going. I guess what made me show it is that, you know, I would like for us to know how things are moving. If we know how things are moving, we know how to avoid things and do things in a different way. You know, I always think that rebels will step smarter than most, you know, on the way that we move. And it's really important. I really felt that one. That's for the people, you know? Okay. And, you know, like I said, it's important to know who you're dealing with. And not only who we're dealing with, but how things are connected, so that we'll know, like, you know, because see, look, we could be buying certain products, like, you know, we never know. We could be buying hand soap, and we supporting, you know, prisons for profit, stuff like that. You know, the way that they got it set up, because they got the money, they have their hands in a little bit of everything. You know, they have investments, you know, shares, all these kind of things that we don't even know about. You know what I mean? So it's better, you know, I'd rather know what I'm doing and who I'm spending my money with, stuff like that. You know, I don't want to, you know, we got our own kids and stuff. You know, that's the reason why I pray that one day we get to the point, where we work together to start our own industries, our own companies, whatever. You know, everybody got a talent. You know, if one person said this is what I wanted to do and we all agree, and then everybody back that talent, things will move even faster. You know, but we have to be intelligent, and it's something that'll be a part of our own community. Not no cult business and all that crap people be saying. It'll be part of a community that's worth having, where it's not controlled by these type of things. You know, this type of trickery. You know, they got it going so many places on that video. They got stuff moving around so much you wouldn't know what's going on if someone didn't break it down in that way. But you know, it really impressed me, and I really felt good about that video, you know, because it helped me understand what my money doing, and the reason that it come to us slowly, you know. Yeah. So also, I got something else too. We're not playing. We rebelling. Yeah, it is better for us to start our own businesses, you know. Well, gun control. You know, this is all I got to say about gun control. I'm not for it. I'm not advocating for it, and the reason being is because I did some research, and in Europe they took all the guns. Now you got more mob killings and knife stabbings and all that kind of stuff. They don't got guns, but then 100 people come and kick your door open and, you know, stabbing up your family and all that. They're not telling that. They're not reporting on that. Yeah, but that's what's going on. And that's because all the guns got taken away. And then they want to be the only ones, the government, who end up with the guns. And then what we going to do then? What you guys think they're going to make us do then? Right. You know, so I don't know. I'm kind of stuck in the middle on that because they already invented guns. It's not cool. You know, I think to me, people who got to shoot somebody with a gun and that person don't got a gun is a coward, basically. You a coward. You need a weapon, like a deadly weapon, to injure this person, but because you can't take a busted lip or a busted nose. You know. Yeah, me too, Queen. I believe in the right to protect yourself. And that's where we get into me not advocating for that gun control stuff because right now they made it so crazy, you know what I'm saying? We need our heaters. We need what we need in order to survive and protect our families, you know? I'd rather go down with it than without it, you know, in the times we're living in because they're not trying to, oh, okay, here, let me give it back to you. Let me, right now we're living in a purge. They doing what that movie said. We're in a purge. You know, it's a mental one, it's a spiritual one, and it's a physical one. You know, they bringing out all the stops. And if we're not paying attention to what's happening, we're going to get lost in the shuffle. But y'all know we be rebelling. We're going to find out what's going on. Right, it's to protect you from a corrupt government, but you see, but they need something to protect themselves from mankind because the men are the ones who running the government, and they're the ones who accepting the bribes and all the sharing the wealth and keeping people held down, and they know they got the reason that it bothered me because it contributes to our people. You know what I mean? Our people, when black people, I'm talking about right now. And I'm not racist and all that, but I'm just saying to my people, it contributed to us being the clowns that we being today. And that's nothing like what we are. That's nothing that's not the bloodline we come from. That's none of those things. We're none of those things. And it's kind of forced upon us and enhanced over the years and through life. And I understand that. I respect that. You can't, I know that the way that they got it is through conquering someone else. So, okay. Though at the same time, we have to understand how to get rid of that out of our heart for each other. There's ways around it. Work together at the things we do. And speaking of that, a lot of things that I see now, even on social media, and we watch it every day, and we see what's going on and all those things. You notice that like so many narratives are being bombarded and created out of thin air, out of nowhere. Where everybody been all these months? So the reason I don't fall into that or say fall into that is because there are several things going on. And again, you wasn't here that day, Queen Italian Honey. Make sure you remember this. You are Team Rebel. You are Queen. You rebelling. Nobody bigger than that. You don't have to answer to no one. You know what I mean? None of the rebels. People going to keep trying to get us in jams. They're going to keep trying to pull us out of our element and off the path we started on. Please keep rebelling. Just be a rebeler. It's a rebel against injustice and negativity. That's it. And they running around using everything plus the kitchen sink to try to pull us off our square. We don't owe that to them. To start something positive and then go back to negative. Everything might not be perfect, but we gonna make it. We're gonna be all right. Just want to let y'all know that because, it's important. It's important not to forget the simple things we've done to have so much power. And that means that the Creator was showing us an example of that He exists, So we're going to stay on it. We're going to keep rebelling. It's a lot going on all the time, even in my life, But I stay to course. I stay rebelling. I stay on what we got to do because the Creator, he didn't let us down. He waking us up every day. And we cannot let people with a head, 2 arms, and 2 legs come up and put that fear in us. Fear is our worst enemy. Trust me. So, with that being said, I love the rebels. We rebelling. We in the building. And that's where we going to be. So, I got another piece, too, I want to show quick. And want to send a shout out, Then we're going to get to some of our people later on because there's some stuff that needs to be extended that I've been watching that was done by Team Rebel. Bless up, King Pac-Man. That was done by Team Rebel that I like to extend in some of our video footage, to make sure, it's on file. So, with that being said, we'll get into the next joint. Yeah. So it's just all about having character, you know what I mean? Content of character, and try to be the best we could be. You know, a lot of people gonna do what they want to do, and I have no problem with that. You know, just remember that, down the line, you know, also what happened was people came back like Rebel, you know what I'm saying, this happened or that happened. And Rebel say he ain't in that because when I spoke about it or speak about it, sometimes we pervy the inside information. So if I ask the team, which is something unusual, you guys should know me for, it'll be unusual for me to say, hey, could everybody, y'all just hang back? See things that's going on and just trying to give a small warning ahead of time, to people who I'm concerned about, that's always, around showing love. So that's sometimes what I do, and so just please don't ever think it's like I'm trying to tell y'all what to do. And with me not being able to express myself like that sometimes without a misunderstanding, it makes it kind of difficult, to like, you know. So I just want to let y'all know I'm always be honest about the things that I'm trying to say and bring to y'all. So if I ask y'all, it's for a reason. Sometimes I just can't blurt it out online in front of everybody, but it's blessed, bless up. So, okay. Oh, for sure, Queen Foxy, bless up. You know it. All the time, all the time. Bless up, King Brandon. Bless up, Michael. Yeah, appreciate you, bro. You know it, little bro. You know how we move. Okay, what I wanted to do was show love on this video right here to a person. Oh, this one, shout out to End Time Productions. I watched some of their stuff. They got some good content as well, and like to share with the rebels, you know. Wait a minute. I think that's the one we just watched. I ain't gonna do that one. But that's wait, is this one? No, we didn't watch this one yet. Nope. Okay. So, this one right here is pretty heavy too. Like I said, from now on, all I'm bringing is super facts. I mean, even more than before. We getting ready to get into it. We got the equipment working. We back. We rebelling, and I feel good. I'm ready. So everybody else be ready too, because this just I'm just doing something right now to get the afternoon boom, make sure the equipment work, everything, and then we're going later on tonight we're gonna get to hitting it, and we're gonna start hitting it. So just be ready. I'm being serious, and I love y'all. We in the building. You know what I'm saying? We got to find out what's happening and what's going on around us and keep that moving. So we always protect it. So love y'all. We're gonna get cracking. This next one.
In the 1950s, a weapon was invented that has become more powerful than America's deadliest weapons of mass destruction. It is the weapon of mass deception, and it is right in our own living rooms. The hypnotizing world of picture television brings us the news of the world through two central news agencies called Reuters and the Associated Press. The Rothschilds bought Reuters in the 1800s, which later bought the Associated Press and made the...
Now, y'all heard that the Rothschilds bought Reuters, and the other one, the Associated Press, in the 1800s. So who been controlling the news the whole time? Y'all understand? Check in. Follow me.
The Rothschild family, owners of the world's largest central news services. To the present day, the world depends on these Rothschild-owned central news services as their main source of news and information. In his book called Who Owns the TV Networks, author Eustace Mullins claims that the major TV networks, radio stations, newspapers, and publishing empires are controlled by the Rothschild, Rockefeller, and J.P. Morgan money cartels through their corporate conglomerates. The bankster-owned media conglomerates include weapons manufacturers General Electric and Westinghouse, which profit from promoting wars. Control over the internet, publishing, recording, and top cable companies can be traced back to the same Big Five media empires: General Electric, Time Warner, Viacom, Disney, and News Corp.
Yeah, but they
These
boom,
media
boom.
monopolies
That's
are
all,
owned
Queen.
directly or indirectly by the Rothschild, J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller, and Oppenheimer Brotherhood. Yes, there are now more stations and more media voices, but they're all coming from the same ventriloquist. Every TV show needs corporate sponsors, and corporate sponsors sponsor pro-business, pro-government programming, and journalists who support the agenda of the Big Five media owners. While 2/3 of the world goes hungry, these banksters offer gazillion-dollar sponsorships to sports athletes to play with their balls. Why? Because they keep the masses distracted from the important issues. The media and banking monopolists now have the power to make or break political leaders around the globe. Why haven't the networks made a TV movie of the week about how the Bush family made their family fortune? The movie could be called The Awful Truth, starring George W.'s great-grandfather, Samuel P. Bush, whose Buckeye steel cast...
Bless up, Queen Lanisha. You work for General Electric? Bless up, King T Knight. Love you, bro. Yeah, you work for General Electric, but you see, it's the people with the money that their hands are into all the small things we struggle with every day. This is the point I'm making. You see what I mean? So at the same time they're giving you a job, just imagine how many wars they sponsoring and supporting and all those things. Oh, for sure, King. Bless up. Good to see you in, bro. For sure. Good to see you in. We rebelling.
Company supplies
Right, the
parts
Bushes too.
for Edward Harriman's railroads, who in turn provides rail shipments for John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil.
Let me go back a little bit.
The movie could be called The Awful Truth, starring George W.'s great-grandfather, Samuel P. Bush, whose Buckeye Steel Castings Company supplies parts for Edward Harriman's railroads, who in turn provides rail shipments for John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil, who in turn gets monopoly financing from the Rothschilds. The movie could be made into a TV series starring Samuel's son, Prescott Bush, as the managing director of a Nazi steel manufacturing plant in Poland called Silesian Consolidated Steel. In episode 1, Prescott Bush forwards American financing to his German partner Fritz Thyssen through the Union Banking Corporation in New York. Fritz Thyssen arranges a contract with Nazi Germany's IG Farben Company for free Jewish slave labor in Bush's steel manufacturing plant at the Auschwitz concentration camp. Episode 2 shows Skull and Bonesman Prescott Bush and Averell Harriman getting caught under Trading with the Enemy Act, as the U.S. government moves in and seizes all of their shares in Union Banking Corporation. In episode 3, Prescott's son, the first George Bush, is director of the CIA. George puts drug king Manuel Noriega on the CIA payroll, allowing thousands of tons of cocaine to hit the streets of America via the Panama Canal. In episode 4, George's son, the second George Bush, becomes partners with Osama bin Laden's older brother, Salem bin Laden, in a Texas oil company called Arbusto Energy. Episode 5 introduces George W.'s shady younger brother, Neil Bush, ripping off the elderly in the Silverado savings and loan scandal that cost U.S. taxpayers $1.3 billion. In episode 6, the Florida election is fixed by George W.'s older brother, Jeb Bush, who puts brother George into the top job at the White House, which brings us back to Auschwitz and the concluding episode with George W. Bush visiting the slave labor camp where his grandfather helped build the Bush family fortune on free Jewish slave labor.
Now, when they say free Jewish slave labor, do you think they were talking about Caucasian Jews? We in the building. Okay, got a short commercial trying to come in. But yeah.
My team and I always had trouble managing our tasks until one of my colleagues found Monday.com. You can see.
All right. Here we go.
The sites are a sobering reminder that of the power of evil and the need for people to resist evil.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a follow-up to the TV series, an award show could celebrate the 20-year friendship of the Bush and Bin Laden families and their shared investment in the Carlyle Group. The Carlyle Group is one of America's largest weapons contractors. For the Bush and Bin Laden families, war means profits, big profits. Although the media creates the illusion of freedom of the press, the dominant opinion and messages always serve the banksters' agenda. The chilling reality is that up to 15% of the tax money deducted from your paycheck each month buys the bombs and pays the salaries of troops to commit these atrocities. Rivers of blood from innocent families and their children is on everybody's hands. The plan for world domination by the banksters cannot be accomplished without your cooperation. That plan was formulated in 1773 at Mayor Rothschild's goldsmith shop by 13 influential German Jewish families. Among them were Rothschild, Oppenheimer, Warburg, and Schiff. Their formula for global control is the 3M formula: money control, media control, and military control.
Y'all remember that. Money, media, and military. If you have the money and you buy the media and get control of the military as well, what do you got? So this is what's going on around us while we busy. You know what I mean? Just want to show y'all. Bless up, bless up.
Like changes to the rules that gave these families the media and money monopolies, new laws are being passed to transfer military control to them by privatizing the military. But if they're killing terrorists, who cares if they are government soldiers or corporate soldiers? A more important question to ask is, who exactly are the terrorists and where do terrorists get their training? The answer is right smack in America at Fort Benning, Georgia. Until January 2001, America's terrorist training school was called School of the Americas, but because of massive protests against its activities, the name was changed to WISC, Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation. Actress Susan Sarandon narrated a documentary film called School of the Assassins. The film exposes the school as a terrorist training camp whose graduates are well-known murderers, torturers, state terrorists, and dictators, including drug king Manuel Noriega. The role of terrorists in the bankster-owned media is to scare the living tax dollars out of citizens, and timing is everything. On the second anniversary of the 9/11 attack on the World Trade Center, George Bush asked for an $87 billion increase in military spending. At the same time, the media released a dramatic video showing Osama bin Laden alive and well and threatening to make the 9/11 attack seem like foreplay. How much do we really know about America's favorite villain? Multimillionaire Osama bin Laden was the 17th of 52 children fathered by a wealthy construction baron named Mohammed bin Laden, who had close ties to the Saudi royal family and the Bush family. In 1979, the American CIA and Pakistan's ISI financed an anti-Soviet group in Afghanistan and provoked a profitable 10-year war with the Russians. When the Russians invaded Afghanistan, the CIA hired Osama bin Laden to recruit and train al-Qaeda fighters to fight the Russian army.
Anti-communist
Communist guerrillas in Afghanistan have been at the front line of the fight against the spread of communism.
But what was the fight really all about? Not carrots or potatoes. It was about poppies, endless fields of opium poppies that provide over 70% of the world's heroin supply to heroin addicts worldwide.
These are very uncomfortable issues for politicians.
It was a dramatic story, but the media failed to tell us the less heroic side of Afghanistan's freedom fighters. America's new friends had become hooked on the economics of the poppy. During the war, many of the Mujahideen radically increased the production of opium, the raw ingredient of heroin.
Opioid abuse in the United States is at epidemic levels.
This is probably the worst drug situation in our country in decades, if not a century.
With deaths more than quadrupling between 1999 and 2015.
The international drug trade began in 1606 when Queen Elizabeth I built England's wealth by trafficking illegal opium from India to China.
One of the countries.
British East India Shipping Company and profited handsomely, not just from drug trafficking, but from trafficking African slaves with her slave trader, John Hawkins. First, knighted her slave trader with the noble title of Sir John Hawkins. By 1830, the British had distanced themselves from dope dealing by granting opium monopoly rights to the Jewish Sassoon family, who became known as the Rothschilds of the Far East. As an agent for the Crown, David Sassoon shared his dope profits with Queen Victoria.
The British East India Company built a major factory to process the opium here at Gazipur. It's still a lucrative earner for the Indian government, which sells opiates to the world's pharmaceutical industry.
When the Chinese banned opium and destroyed 600 chest loads of the addictive drug, Sassoon and the British retaliated.
It was a financial disaster for the British. With huge profits at stake, they retaliated with the Opium Wars of 1843 and 1858. Forces of the market were to defeat China's moral prohibition.
Sassoon and the British forced drug addiction onto an entire nation, stole the island of Hong Kong, and made Hong Kong the capital of the British international drug trade. In 1872, Queen Victoria knighted David Sassoon's son, Albert Sassoon, who spread the illegal opium trade throughout China and Japan. In 1887, Sir Albert Sassoon married Aline Caroline Rothschild and joined the pirated fortunes of the Sassoon drug cartel with the Rothschild money cartel. Today, it's business as usual for the descendants of the Sassoon and Rothschild families who socialize with Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Charles as elite members of Britain's inner power circle. Many have been granted royal titles like Sir, Countess, Baron, and Marquis, but their many victims aren't fooled by the crowns, the titles, and the tuxedos. They have very different titles for them. Titles like liars, thieves, dope dealers, and mass murderers. On the other side of the Atlantic, a member of the same opium smuggling syndicate, Samuel Russell, founded Yale University's Skull and Bones Brotherhood with drug money. Exclusive members were financed into political power positions in the CIA, the U.S. Supreme Court, and the White House. When Skull and Bonesman George Bush Sr. became CIA director in the 1980s, the CIA recruited Osama bin Laden to train al-Qaeda and Mujahideen fighters in Afghanistan. The job of Osama's trainees was not just to fight the Russian communists, it was to run Afghanistan's multi-billion-dollar opium trade. Heroin, manufactured from Afghan opium, supplied $250 to $300 billion annually to Wall Street and the U.S. banks. Authors Alfred McCoy and Michael Levine tied the CIA to this unholy drug alliance and received national attention when the CIA tried to suppress their books.
Michael Levine became a best-selling author when he wrote about his experience of this unholy alliance. After 30 years' distinguished service with the DEA, he could write with some authority.
You could look at what they did to me as an example in microcosm of Central Intelligence's actions and the State Department in completely subverting the drug war. You know, the drug war was something that only existed in the minds of Americans, on the streets of America, for kids like my brother, for cops who died. There was no drug war. The biggest drug dealers in the world were given a license to sell drugs to Americans to support themselves. And this continued right down from Southeast Asia, through the Mujahideen, through the Contras.
But how was the heroin smuggled into the United States? One of America's most gruesome secrets is that during the Vietnam War, heroin was smuggled into the United States by hiding it inside the body bags of dead American soldiers. By the end of the 1960s, 1/3 of U.S. soldiers in Vietnam and close to 1 million United States citizens were hooked on heroin. Drugs like LSD, mescaline, marijuana, and hashish also swamped the streets and college campuses of America. Who or what turned America's youth onto these illegal drugs? Celebrity anti-war activists like Aldous Huxley, Timothy Leary, Allen Ginsberg, and Bertrand Russell sold America's youth on acid rock, tripping out, and one world government. Their financing came from the Warburg Banksters and IPS, Institute for Policy Studies. Over 100 million doses of LSD that hit the streets of America were purchased by Timothy Leary and Alan Dulles through S.G. Warburg's Sandoz AB Pharmaceutical Company in Switzerland. Free sample-sized packages of acid were handed out not only on college campuses, but at rock concerts, where musicians persuaded millions of fans to get high. Critics of the drug culture blame parents, teachers, law enforcement, and everybody except the people behind it all, namely the Rothschild-Warburg banksters and their Committee of 300. According to Dr. John Coleman, who wrote the story of the Committee of 300, the Beatles rock group were brought to America by the Tavistock Institute. Tavistock launched the drug culture revolution in America to popularize and normalize social drug use. Through their record companies and advertising monopolies, the banksters had packaged and financed their celebrity salesmen to anesthetize, addict, and enslave billions of people worldwide with dependencies on both prescription and non-prescription, legal and illegal drugs. Those drugs range from alcohol, nicotine, and caffeine to Prozac, crack cocaine, and heroin. Like the phony war on terrorism, the phony war on drugs is a cat and mouse game being fought with one hand and fed with the other. The peace symbol adopted by the drug flower children of the 60s was designed by Gerald Holtom, who was commissioned by One World Government salesman Bertrand Russell. The symbol was never designed as a symbol of peace, but as a symbol of death. It is actually a cross turned upside down with the arms broken and is used by Satanists and in Druid witchcraft. In Germany, the symbol is known as the Death Rune and is found on tombstones of Hitler's Nazi SS officers. CIA's team of ex-Nazis and skull and bonesmen financed and trained Osama bin Laden, who pushed the Russians out of Afghanistan by 1989. The CIA then trained and installed the ruthless Taliban regime to run the booming opium trade. After a decade, the long friendship between America and the Taliban suddenly turned ugly. At a meeting held on December 4th, 1997 at Unocal headquarters, American oil men made a proposal to the Taliban about building a pipeline through Afghanistan. Rothschild Shell Oil and Rockefeller's Exxon Oil had invested billions in the Kazakhstan oil and gas reserves just north of Afghanistan. Now they needed a pipeline to transport it to the Persian Gulf. The Taliban demanded a bigger cut and turned down the proposal. Suddenly, the banksters' American-controlled media were calling the Taliban monsters, evildoers, and cruel villains who beat up on women. On July 4th, 1999, President Clinton froze the Taliban's U.S. assets and bank accounts and imposed trade sanctions on Afghanistan. By February 2001, the Taliban destroyed most of Afghanistan's opium crops. In May, Secretary of State Colin Powell announced a gift of 43 million U.S. taxpayers' dollars to the Taliban. He called it a reward to the Taliban for destroying the opium crops, but members of the new George W. Bush White House knew the Taliban would use the 43 million for more sinister purposes.
The larger issue is not just not connecting the dots, but not getting the dots. Why was it that CIA was unable to collect information for years inside Afghanistan when they had authority to kill bin Laden for over...
What's up, Queen Amy Lee? How you doing, my friend? I pray that your heart heal quickly, and I'm sorry, and my condolences to hear about your mom. Bless up. I pray that you heal quickly, Queen. Yep. You and Queen Miss A. Miss A had an unfortunate incident where, some things happened as well. So I pray that Queen Miss A, that her heart is healed quickly as well, her and her family. Bless up. Yeah, got to be pretty tough for you, Queen. Okay, Queen, bless up. After the live, we'll figure it out after the live, okay? All right, bless up. Man.
For 2.5 years, why were they unable to kill him or his lieutenants? Why didn't they have a better capability to do something about it at the source?
Could it be that the bankster-supported U.S. administration is controlling both sides of the war on terror? George Bush Jr. attacked the poverty-stricken, war-ravaged country of Afghanistan only 4 weeks after 9/11. The U.S. and British military dropped 12,000 bombs on thousands of buildings and homes, pounding them into dust and rubble and killing 8,000 Afghan people. 20,000 more people died from war-related cold, starvation, and disease. Nobody made a big-budget TV production out of the massacre with a God Bless Afghanistan movie score. The U.S.-British war on Afghanistan left behind millions of starving people and thousands of women who are still veiled, still homeless, and still penniless.
Afghanistan is the world's largest producer of opium and now the world's largest producer of heroin.
دې علت دا ده چې 14 کاله دلته جنگ تیر شوی، زراعت تباه شوی، شفاخانې تباه شوي، تجارت تباه شوی، تعلیمي ادارې تباه شوي، مکتبونه تباه شوي، سرکونه تباه دي، ولږه ده، فقر ده، خلک بله چاره نه لري څه وکړي.
There can never be peace and democracy in Afghanistan. Why?
My condolences, King T. Knight. Bless up, King.
And cut off
I know
corporate
that.
America's opium and heroin trade at the
up.
source. So what was the payoff for the U.S.-British war on Afghanistan? 1, the uncooperative Taliban warlords got kicked out and replaced by the cooperative Northern Alliance warlords. 2, opium and heroin production and revenues skyrocketed. 3, Afghanistan got a new leader named Hamid Karzai, who just happens to be an ex-employee of Unocal Oil. 3, America got permission to build their oil and gas pipeline through Afghanistan. In the 1980s, the United States supported Iraq's invasion of its neighbor, Iran, to stop the spread of Iran's Islamic Revolution. America played both sides of the Iran-Iraq war by supplying Saddam with chemical and biological weapons of mass destruction, and at the same time, America secretly sold weapons to Iran and illegally diverted the money to the Contra-revolutionaries in Central America.
During the war, the United States sent a special envoy to see Saddam in 1983. He was Donald Rumsfeld, now the U.S. Defense Secretary. The two men discussed how to reinforce Iraq against a common enemy. This was at a time when Iraq was using chemical weapons on Iranian troops. U.S. companies were supplying components with Washington's knowledge.
By 1990, President George Bush Sr. tricked Iraq into another war with another oil-rich neighbor, Kuwait. How? By supplying Kuwait with horizontal drills that could reach beneath the border of Iraq and siphon oil from Iraq's oil fields. Kuwait used the U.S.-made drills to steal 300,000 barrels of oil per day from Iraq, worth over $3 billion annually.
The fuse was lit, and Kuwait did nothing to put it out. They pumped oil without restraint from Rumaila oil field, which was accessible to both Kuwait and Iraq, and they exceeded OPEC quotas, flooding the market and driving prices even lower.
George Bush Sr. officially promised not to interfere in Iraq's legitimate oil battle with Kuwait, but when Saddam's army entered Kuwait to defend their oil reserves, Bush pounced on them.
Our goal is not the conquest of Iraq. It is the liberation of Kuwait.
America disposed of its toxic waste problem by building radioactive depleted uranium right into their bombs and dropping them on Iraq. Bush Sr. not only devastated and poisoned Iraq's water systems and infrastructure, he weakened the economies of both Kuwait and Iraq, collected giant profits from rationed Iraqi food for oil programs, and landed massive rebuilding contracts in Kuwait. Bush Sr. followed up the Gulf War with 10 long years of deadly trade sanctions that killed another 1.5 million Iraqi people, including 600,000 children who were cut off from medical supplies.
In a bookstore in the United States today, you can find 50 books celebrating different aspects of the war and how grand it all was. And you only find one that points out that this was a war crime, that demonstrates the evidence that shows that we deliberately targeted civilians and killed more than 250,000 people in Iraq.
You will be fighting not to conquer anybody, but to liberate people.
In March 2003, President George Bush Jr. launched the Second Gulf War. The war on Iraq wasn't about revenge for 9/11, since not one of the 19 accused terrorists were Iraqi citizens. It wasn't about weapons of mass destruction, which inspectors hadn't found. It wasn't even about Saddam Hussein, who had been financed into power by the U.S. in the first place, and who got his chemical and biological weapons from American companies. No, the U.S. wars against Iraq and against Afghanistan were about mass murder and piracy. They were about big weapons sales, big oil, big pipelines, big drugs, and big rebuilding contracts. They were about colonizing the Middle East and moving 2 giant steps closer to world domination.
Private First Class Lindy England may never have figured these images would beam into the homes of millions of horrified people. Whatever she might have thought at the time, she says she and her comrades had no choice.
So to stand there, give a thumbs up, smile, stand behind all the naked Iraqis in the pyramid, take a picture.
Who told you to do that?
Persons in my higher chain of command.
Why were naked Muslim prisoners positioned on top of each other in the shape of an Egyptian pyramid? The answer can be found in the distant past. In ancient times, Iraq was called Babylon.
The year is 586 BC. The armies of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, descend on Jerusalem with the wrath of an angry God. It is almost 6 centuries before the birth of Christ. The Romans have not yet even dreamed of empire. It is is a dark chapter in the history of the Jews, while Babylon's fierce star is rising. The Bible describes the Babylonian attack. Homes are pillaged, King Solomon's temple is set ablaze and utterly destroyed.
Saddam Hussein made the mistake of comparing himself to Babylon's King Nebuchadnezzar. The capture of Iraq and Saddam Hussein was not just about oil and colonization, it was also about settling an old Hebrew score.
We got him.
On December 13th, the producers of 911 released a new reality TV show called We Got 'Em. The Iraqi people claimed the We Got 'Em video show was staged. Why? Because the video shows ripe, yellow-colored dates growing on a tree to the left of the hole, where Saddam Hussein was supposedly captured. Every Iraqi citizen knows that Iraqi dates only ripen and turn yellow in July and August, never in December. Since date trees don't tell lies, the We Got 'Em video had to be staged at least 3 months earlier in July or August, not on December 13th as reported. How could Saddam, who is almost 70 years old and over 6 feet tall with a bloated belly, squeeze in and out of a hole that small? How could he have grown a beard that long in such a short time? Why did he dye his hair black while in hiding? For his CNN close-ups, perhaps? There are 3 books which clearly map out the Zionist plan for world domination. The Bible, written by Hebrews.
We love you
Morals
too,
and
Queen
Dogma,
Tanya. Bless
written
up.
by Freemason Albert Pike. And the Protocols of Zion, written by the Priori of Zion and revised by the Zionist Illuminati. The Zionist plan is to create an apocalypse that will exhaust and depopulate the masses through deadly designer viruses, global terror, economic disasters, and nuclear war, when the remaining survivors will gladly embrace the promises of a handsome, charismatic new leader who will unveil his plan of hope for eternal world peace. The only way to achieve eternal world peace, he will explain, is to put an end to the 5 causes of war. Secretly, he knows there is only one main cause of wars. The wars caused by his royal ancestors who planned, provoked, financed, and profited from them. He will sell his peace plan by telling the world that border wars will only end by creating a world without borders. Religious wars will only end by creating one world religion of interfaiths. Economic wars will only end by creating a cashless, debt-free society. Rivalry wars between rulers will only end by creating one world ruler. The tools used for war, from handguns to nuclear bombs, will be eliminated, and one world army will be created, which will guarantee world peace. How will this eternal peace plan be accomplished? Through the United Nations, which is the brainchild of the Committee of 300 Ruling Families. The UN is their vehicle for world government and is located on 18 acres of prime Manhattan land, donated by the most visible of the...
Remember, 300 families, and the UN is their security network. Don't forget.
Ruling families, the Rockefellers. The UN is a closed organization with no public records or open meetings. U.S. taxpayers have already invested $2 trillion in this world authority. Although most of the people working for the UN are genuinely working for peace, the UN is a godless organization controlled by the Committee of 300. These inbred ruling families pretend to have royal blue blood.
I'll see what they got, Slick.
But their blood is no more blue or royal than Hannibal Lecter's blood. Some speculate that these families of evildoers are demons or aliens or evil shape-shifting reptilians, but there is a more scientific explanation for their madness. For thousands of years, these families have practiced inbreeding between sisters and brothers, uncles and nieces, mothers and sons, to keep the power and wealth all in the family. This practice of inbreeding over thousands of years has produced a clever but pathological breed of conscienceless, sociopathic families who will stop at nothing to own every ounce of gold, every drop of water, and every blade of grass on planet Earth. The United Nations, which they founded and control, has clearly stated its goals of establishing a new world order, a UN standing army, and a global taxation system. The Queen's husband, Prince Philip, and Evelyn Rothschild have already established an interfaith declaration for the creation of one world religion. What would life be like in this world empire with one world religion, one world army, one world economy, one world court, one world media, one world government, and one world dictator? What the public doesn't know is that Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto and the Russian Constitution have been built into the UN Charter, and that the New World Order will be a communist world order. Peace on earth will be a forced peace in which citizens will have no rights. No right to bear children without approval, no right to travel without authorization, no right to own private property, no right to privacy, no right to bear arms, no right to protest, no right to receive an inheritance, no right to choose an education or a job or even a place of residence, and worst of all, no right to live. The right to live will be based on an individual's rating of usefulness to the royal elite. In this planned world without borders or nations, citizens will be disarmed of all weapons, including handguns, and will have no means to protest, fight, resist, or challenge this one world authority who will control them spiritually, economically, and militarily. Every human being will be electronically tattooed and will become helplessly dependent on this one world authority for all of their most basic needs. The masses will eventually be taught to bow down and worship this one world dictator who will rule the entire world from his eternal throne in Israel.
They have waited for him.
That's okay, man.
They believe in him. They expect he will heal the world's ills. Some say he is the Messiah, finally returned. But this man is not a savior. He is the king of terror who will usher in the end of everything.
Despite all the red flags, many people deny that a problem even exists. It does exist, and the good news is there are solutions. The solutions lie in knowing what the three biggest fears of the world's ruling families are. The first biggest fear is exposure. They have gone to great lengths to cover up their trail of crimes and to win the public's trust through their media monopolies. Without public trust, their ancestral plan for global control is doomed. Their second biggest fear is losing public support. If the public stops cooperating, their plan is guaranteed to fail. Their third biggest nightmare is organized resistance by an informed and fearless public. The ruling families know from past experience that the will of the people can defeat all their military and monetary might. Vietnam is a perfect example. There is no doubt whatsoever that these ruling families can be totally defeated by turning their three worst fears into a reality.
And with that on our enemy, who's hiding the money, helping cause all the chaos, we drop the mic. Rabbit Hole Part 1. Bless up, bless up. Yeah. So, anytime y'all just check it out, go back over it, see what it is that they're doing, to be aware is to be alive. That's the way I see it. Yeah, but we building our own community where we're gonna be able to deflect some of these things. you know, and that's from knowing what's going on, seeing what's happening, you know. Oh yeah, we rebelling. Ain't no stopping. So we got some goodies coming up later on tonight. You know what I mean? Definitely we're gonna, you know what I'm saying, drop a little J4K. We're gonna do a couple other things, you know, a little later on. Get back to our rebelling. Ain't nothing changed. So bless up all the Queen and King. Bless up Original Wrench Mob. Bless up Team Rebel. We in the building. You know what I'm saying? Thank each and every one of y'all for coming through. You know what I'm saying? A little later on, we're going to get it cracking again. Y'all welcome to come back. You know, check out some good things. You know what I'm saying? We're going to keep turning it up, up, up. That's the only way we can go. You know, good to see you, King T Night. You know what I'm saying? I want to extend one of your videos later on, too. I like that piece, brother. So, just want to drop back in, let everybody know we back. You know, we got the system working. Bless up, Hollywood. Good to see you. Yeah, we got the system back working. So I'm gonna keep kicking it up a notch. We got a lot of information I got backed up now. I don't have a particular time, but I'm trying to definitely get on there no later than 8 o'clock. You know, so we could go ahead from about 8 to 10. You know, try to do our thing. So just to let y'all know, I don't have a particular time, but that's the one I was shooting for. You know it, Queen Tanya. Yeah. So bless up all the Queen and King. See y'all soon. You know what I'm saying? Stay away from the negative. It ain't going to work. You know what I mean? It's not going to help your life. It's not going to build you up. You know what I'm saying? If you're not rebelling, you know what I'm saying? Be careful. You know, because they trying to distract a lot. Bless up, Queen Georgina. Yeah. So, you know, just wanted to let y'all know, big love, bless up to all the Queen and King. Thank y'all for coming through. Y'all stay safe and stay protected. You know what I'm saying? We right here with you. You know, we're going to keep rebelling, and we'll watch it all go by. So I'll talk to y'all a little later. Peace.